There's a moment when you realize nobody's coming to save you. Not your parents. Not your friends. Nobody. That moment came for me on a freezing night when I was sitting in a broken car with two children, one who was 3 years old, one still kicking inside my belly, and I had exactly $47 to my name. I was 20 years old. I had been homeless for almost 3 years. And I had just made the biggest mistake of my life all over again. But what happened that night, when I finally had the courage to knock on a stranger's door, it didn't just save my life. It saved a man's soul. And brought back a daughter he thought he'd lost forever. This is the story nobody sees coming. If you believe in second chances, if you believe people can come back from the worst moments of their lives, like this video right now. Because you're about to see just how much one decision can change everything. Let me take you back. To when I was 16 years old. I had everything a girl could want. A nice house. Parents who looked successful. A future that seemed planned out. But behind closed doors, my father was someone different. And I learned early that the people closest to you can hurt you in ways nobody else can. I won't tell you every detail. Some things are still difficult for me to put into words. But I learned how to hide pain. I learned how to smile when people were watching. And I learned how to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. When I was 16, I met a boy at school. He made me feel like I mattered. Like I was more than just the scared girl hiding bruises under her sleeves. For the first time in a long time, somebody seemed to notice me. We were together for 3 months. Then I found out I was pregnant. I remember sitting there staring at the test, my hands shaking. I was terrified. But part of me believed he would stay. I thought we would figure it out together. Instead, he disappeared. Just, gone. Like I had never been real to him. I called. I texted. I waited. Nothing. Eventually, I had to tell my parents. And instead of helping me, they told me I had 2 choices. Get rid of the baby. Or get out of the house. I remember looking at my mother, waiting for her to defend me. She didn't. Then I looked at my father. And I realized they had already made their decision. So I made mine. I chose my son. At 17 years old, I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. He was tiny. Perfect. And when the nurse placed him in my arms, I remember thinking, you're the first person in this world who is completely mine to protect. 3 days later, my mother packed my belongings and left them on the porch. I was 17. A mother. And completely alone. You get used to things you never thought a person could get used to. You get used to sleeping in your car. You get used to your little boy asking why other children have houses and he doesn't. You get used to choosing between food and gas money. You get used to washing yourself in public restrooms before work so nobody knows where you slept the night before. And eventually, you get used to being invisible. For the next few years, I worked. I cleaned houses. I worked at diners. I took whatever job I could get. If somebody needed floors scrubbed, I scrubbed them. If somebody needed tables cleaned, I cleaned them. Everything I earned went toward keeping my son fed and safe. Even when the only roof over his head was the roof of a 2003 Honda Civic. I created routines. Survival routines. Wake up. Get my son ready. Drive him to a woman who ran an inexpensive daycare from her home. Go to work. Pick him up. Find somewhere safe to park. Lock the doors. Sleep. Wake up. Repeat. There were nights I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. There were mornings I looked at myself in a gas station bathroom mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back at me. Sometimes I thought about calling my parents. I imagined swallowing every bit of pride I had left and asking them to take my son. Not me. Just him. Because at least then he would have a bed. A bedroom. A real home. But every time I came close to doing it, I would look at my little boy sleeping beside me. His head against the car seat. His tiny chest rising and falling. And I would think, he needs me. Even if I'm broken, he needs me. So I kept going. Then, when my son was almost 3, I met someone. And I wish I could tell you I knew better by then. I didn't. I didn't want another relationship at first. I had already learned what trusting the wrong person could cost me. But this man was patient. He was kind to my son. He brought him little toys. He asked me how my day had been. He told me I shouldn't have to carry everything by myself. And when you've spent years carrying everything alone, those words can sound like rescue. I wanted so badly to believe him. For a little while. I did. He told me we would build a life together. He told me my son deserved a father figure. He told me I deserved someone who would stay. Then I found out I was pregnant again. I was terrified. I remember sitting beside him and telling him the news, waiting for the same expression I had seen years earlier. But he smiled. He hugged me. And he promised me something. This time is going to be different. He said he wasn't going anywhere. And against every instinct I had developed over the years, I believed him. Within 2 months, he was gone. He told me he had another family he had somehow forgotten to mention. Another woman. Another life. And just like that, he disappeared. Again. At 20 years old, I was homeless with a 3-year-old and 8 months pregnant with my second child. And then my car died. The same week I realized he wasn't coming back. It literally just stopped working. I turned the key. Nothing. Tried again. Nothing. I sat there staring through the windshield while my son slept in the back seat. And I almost laughed. Because it felt like even the universe was saying, you know what? You haven't suffered enough. Let's add one more thing. I had $47. A 3-year-old who needed food. A baby inside me who could arrive at any time. And no car. No home. No family. No person I could call and say, please come get us. That was the moment I finally admitted something I had been too stubborn to admit for years. I couldn't do this alone anymore. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't enough. And for the first time, saying that didn't feel like weakness. It felt like the truth. So I did the only thing I could think of. I took my son's hand. And I walked. It had already started raining. At first it was light. Then the sky opened. Within minutes, both of us were soaked. I wrapped my jacket around my son as tightly as I could and kept walking. I didn't know where we were going. I just knew sitting beside that dead car wasn't going to save us. My son kept asking me one question. Mommy, where are we going? And every time he asked, I gave him the same answer. Somewhere safe. But the truth was, I had no idea where somewhere safe was. We walked until my shoes were soaked through. Until my legs started aching. Until my back hurt so badly I had to stop every few minutes. The baby inside me kept moving. And every kick reminded me that very soon I was going to have 2 children depending on me. Then, through the rain, I saw a light. At first, I thought it might be a business. But as we got closer, I realized it was a farmhouse. It sat back from the road behind a wooden fence. There was an old barn nearby. Warm yellow light glowed through the windows. I could see smoke rising from the chimney. And through one window, I could see the flicker of a fire. I stopped at the edge of the property. I stared at that house for what felt like forever. Because it looked like everything I hadn't had in years. Warmth. Safety. Home. But I was terrified. What if whoever lived there told us to leave? What if they called the police? What if they saw me exactly the way I had started seeing myself? As a problem. As a failure. As somebody they didn't want near their home. Then my son tugged at my hand. "Mommy?" I looked down. His lips were trembling. "I'm cold." That was all it took. I walked up the muddy driveway. Every step toward that farmhouse felt heavier than the last. By the time we reached the porch, my hands were shaking. I raised one hand. And knocked. Nothing. For a second, I almost walked away. Then I heard footsteps. The door opened. And standing there was a man I had never seen before. He looked to be in his 40s. Tall. Quiet. The kind of man whose face told you he had lived through things he didn't talk about. His eyes moved from me. To my son. Then down to my pregnant belly. Nobody spoke. Rain poured behind us. Finally, I swallowed. "Please." My voice barely came out. "I don't need money." He kept looking at me. "I just need somewhere warm for my son tonight. We won't bother you. We can sit on the porch. The barn. Anywhere. Please." For the longest moment of my life, the man said nothing. Then he looked at my little boy. My son was shivering. And something changed in the man's face. He opened the door wider. "Come inside." I didn't move. I genuinely thought I had heard him wrong. He stepped aside. "Both of you. Come inside before you freeze." His name was Marcus. I didn't know it yet. But walking through that door was going to change all of our lives. And something shifted. Not because I suddenly believed everything would be okay. Not because all my problems disappeared. But because, for the first time in almost 3 years, somebody chose to help. Without demanding anything. Without judging me. Without asking what I had done to deserve being where I was. Marcus gave my son dry clothes. He gave us something warm to eat. He found blankets. He told us we could stay until the storm passed. But sometime during the night, a pain went through my stomach. Then another. I tried to ignore it. I had been under so much stress that I thought maybe my body was simply exhausted. Then another contraction came. Stronger. Marcus looked at me. "Are you okay?" I tried to say yes. Then another contraction hit. And suddenly, everything became very real. Marcus drove us to the hospital. He could have dropped us outside. He could have called social services and gone home. He could have decided that opening his door had already been enough. But he didn't. He stayed. He made sure my 3-year-old was safe while the doctors examined me. And when the contractions became stronger, Marcus remained at the hospital. At one point, I remember reaching for somebody's hand. His was the closest. So I grabbed it. And he didn't pull away. He stayed there. Talking to me. Telling me I was doing okay. Telling me to breathe. Telling me I wasn't alone. Hours later, my second son was born. When I heard him cry, I started crying too. Not because I was sad. Because for months I had been terrified that this baby would enter the world the same way I had been living in it. Alone. But he didn't. Marcus was standing there. And when the doctors asked him if he was the father, Marcus looked at me, then at the baby. "No," he said. Then he said something I would remember for the rest of my life. "But I'm the person who's going to make sure they're safe." I didn't understand why. Not then. But I was about to. When we left the hospital, I expected Marcus to take us to a shelter. Maybe give me some money. Maybe wish us luck. Instead, he drove us back to the farmhouse. There was a small guest house on the property. Nothing luxurious. But to me, it looked like a palace. There was a bed. A bathroom. A little kitchen. A crib Marcus had somehow found before we were discharged. And another small bed for my oldest son. I stood inside that room and cried. Marcus looked worried. What's wrong? I shook my head. Nothing. I touched the blanket on my son's bed. That's the problem. Nothing is wrong. For the first time in years, nothing was wrong. We were warm. We were safe. My children had somewhere to sleep. Then I asked the question I had been afraid to ask. Why? Marcus looked at me. Why would you do all this for people you don't even know? For a moment, he said nothing. Then I saw something in his eyes. A sadness I recognized immediately. Because it looked like mine. The sadness of somebody who had lost something they didn't know how to get back. 3 months passed. I started working again. I saved whatever money I could. Marcus never asked me for rent. He never made me feel like I owed him something. And slowly, my children and I stopped living like we were waiting for everything to disappear. But I started noticing things about Marcus. Sometimes he would stand outside the guest house and watch me with my boys. Not in a strange way. More like he was remembering something. Sometimes my oldest son would run toward him, and Marcus would smile. Then suddenly become quiet. There were photographs in his farmhouse too. Most were old. But in several of them, there was a little girl. Same brown eyes as Marcus. Same smile. One afternoon, I finally asked. Who is she? Marcus looked at the photograph. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said. My daughter. Her name was Emma. 12 years earlier, Emma had been 7 years old. Marcus loved his daughter. But loving someone and choosing them are not always the same thing. Back then, Marcus was consumed by work. He believed providing money was the same thing as being present. He missed birthdays. School events. Promises. He kept telling himself he was building a better future for his family. But Emma's mother saw something Marcus refused to see. Their daughter didn't need a bigger house. She needed her father. Eventually, Emma's mother left. She took Emma with her. Marcus thought he would have time to fix everything. He thought there would always be another phone call. Another visit. Another opportunity to explain. But anger grew. Years passed. And what started as distance became silence. For 12 years, Marcus lived with one question. What if I had chosen differently? When I saw you standing at my door, Marcus told me, pregnant, soaking wet, holding that little boy's hand. I saw what happens when people are left behind. His voice broke. I spent 12 years wishing someone would give me another chance to choose differently. He looked toward my sons. And that night, I realized maybe God wasn't giving me my old life back. He looked at me. Maybe he was giving me another chance to become the man I should have been. That was when I finally understood the words on his face every time he watched me with my children. Marcus wasn't just helping us. In some strange way. We were helping him too. But there was another part Marcus hadn't told me. Something I never expected. His ex-wife knew about my situation. Through someone connected to social services, she had heard about a young pregnant mother with a small child who desperately needed somewhere safe to stay. She also knew Marcus still lived alone on that farmhouse. She quietly made sure I was pointed toward that area that night. She didn't tell Marcus. And she didn't tell me. She wanted to know something. After 12 years. If life placed someone vulnerable directly in front of Marcus again, would he choose work? Would he choose inconvenience? Would he close the door? Or would he finally choose people? And Emma knew about it too. I stared at Marcus. So I was a test? He shook his head. No. He looked down. I think I was. That sentence broke something open inside me. Because all my life, I had believed I was the person who needed saving. But maybe that wasn't the whole truth. Sometimes we save each other. Sometimes the person you think is saving you is actually the person you're saving. Not long after that, Emma came to the farmhouse. She was 19 now. The last time Marcus had truly known her, she had been a little girl. I remember watching him stand near the window waiting for her car. He had faced storms without fear. He had rushed a stranger to the hospital without hesitation. But waiting for his daughter? His hands were shaking. When Emma stepped out of the car, neither of them moved at first. 12 years stood between them. 12 years of anger. Regret. Missed birthdays. Unanswered questions. Then Marcus said, "I'm sorry." Nothing dramatic. No excuses. No speech about why he had done what he did. Just, "I'm sorry." Emma started crying. Marcus did too. But she didn't immediately run into his arms. Forgiveness doesn't always happen like that. Sometimes forgiveness begins with simply agreeing to stay in the same room. Over the next year, something miraculous happened. Emma kept coming back. At first, only for an hour. Then an afternoon. Then dinner. She watched her father with my sons. She watched him wake up early when one of them was sick. She watched him repair toys. She watched him sit on the floor playing with them. She watched him show up. Again. And again. And again. One afternoon, my oldest son fell asleep against Marcus while they were sitting outside. Emma stood in the doorway watching them. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she whispered, "You really changed." Marcus looked at her. "I should have changed sooner." Emma wiped her eyes. "You should have." And Marcus nodded. He didn't defend himself. He simply said, "I know." That was the moment something changed between them. Emma didn't forgive 12 years in one afternoon. But she started. Her mother eventually came too. And slowly, carefully, they began rebuilding what had been broken. Marcus didn't get his old life back. That version of his family was gone. You can't erase 12 years. You can't go backwards and become the father you should have been. But Marcus learned something. Sometimes a second chance doesn't mean getting back what you lost. Sometimes it means becoming worthy of what comes next. And me? My sons now have a home. They have safety. They have a man in their lives who chose them even though he didn't have to. I went back to work. Eventually, I started saving real money. My oldest son stopped asking why other children had houses and he didn't. Because now, he had one. And for the first time in my life, I stopped waking up afraid that everything would be taken away. I had spent years believing my pain was proof that I didn't matter. That maybe some people were simply born to be forgotten. I don't believe that anymore. Because one rainy night, when I was exhausted, pregnant, broke, and terrified, I knocked on a stranger's door. I thought I was asking him to save my children. I had no idea we were giving him something too. A second chance. My sons now have a home. They have safety. They have someone who shows up. Marcus has his daughter back in his life. And I finally have proof that I'm not invisible. That my pain wasn't the end of my story. That being abandoned didn't mean I was unworthy of being loved. That making mistakes didn't mean my life was over. We're not just surviving anymore. We're actually living. And sometimes, when it rains at night, I stand near that same farmhouse window and look toward the driveway. I think about the girl I was that night. Soaked. Terrified. Holding a 3-year-old's hand. Carrying another baby inside her. With $47 to her name. She thought she had reached the end. She didn't know she was standing at the beginning. This is where my story ends. But maybe it's where someone else's story can begin again. Because sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to knock. And another person willing to open the door. If you're watching this and you feel like I did, invisible, broken, forgotten, I need you to know this. Your worst moment is not your final moment. Like this video if it gave you hope. Comment your story below, I read every single one. And subscribe because I'm telling more stories like this. Stories about people who came back. Stories about grace. Stories about second chances. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it tonight. Someone who feels like they're standing outside in the rain with nowhere left to go. You never know. You might be giving them the hope they need to keep going. I'm Alex. And I'm not invisible anymore. Thank you for letting me tell my story.